Thank you all for joining us for the Crafting a Relationship with Your Research Advisor workshop. Joining us today is Nicole Thomas. She's a current graduate student, graduate research assistant, and GPSA secretary. She's going to be discussing tips and strategies on how to participate in a healthy and productive research advisor and graduate student relationship. I'm going to hand it over to her to get us started. Thanks, Nicole.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nevena. Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I have a PowerPoint for you all today. And if at any point throughout this you have a question, as Nevena said, please go ahead, put it in the chat. And then, Nev, if you don't mind just letting me know, and then I can pause. Perfect. Okay. So this presentation, I actually did this during my undergraduate career. I attended UNLV, got my bachelor's, and now I'm pursuing my master's. So prior to my work here, I actually worked for the Office of Undergraduate Research, where we would connect undergraduates with potential faculty mentors to conduct research. So for them, it was a bit of a different presentation in terms of like establishing a relationship with, their primary investigator or PI. For us, however, it's something that it's more long-term, like the relationship that you have to have with your primary investigator, otherwise known as your PI, as well as, they are your research advisor, your committee chair, and they're the ones that are essentially signing off on all of your paperwork. They're the ones approving your research projects. They're the ones that kind of decide whether or not you graduate. So it's really, really important to have that relationship with the advisor of your choice. And hopefully we can address kind of how to establish that and do it well. So a bit of my background, I'm currently in the MS in Curriculum and Instruction Science Education. I'm also a Nevada NASA Space Grant Consortium Fellow, and my research focuses on misconceptions in STEM. Along with that, I'm the graduate assistant for the undergraduate student government here, and then my previous work is listed there as well. So the reason I bring up each of these things is because I want you to understand that while it might be difficult, it's not impossible to navigate working with your advisor in each of these settings. Whether it's research, service, teaching, or all three combined, establishing a working relationship with your research advisor is essential. So you're able to balance all of these different things if you're able to communicate that to them. So we're going to go over like communication tips, how to contact them, really just how to establish that working relationship and to not be afraid of your advisor, to not be intimidated by them, and to kind of see eye to eye in terms of like, you're a person and I'm a person too, and we want to succeed at the same things. So with that, where do you start? Well, you have to be clear about your goals and aspirations. So making sure that you're able to translate that to your advisor is an essential skill. Being able to say, this is what I want to do with my master's or my PhD. This is, what I'm hoping to gain from this program, what I'm hoping to gain from this experience. Being able to set up that like long-term kind of goal strategy will really help in identifying like basically what steps you need to take in order to work with your advisor. So getting that first meeting with them and saying, hey, here's actually what I want to do with my degree program. Here's what I'm hoping to do with my research. And if you don't really know where to start, that's also okay, because the reason why they exist is to provide you advice and guidance in that specific topic. You should become aware of your principal investigator's expectations. So whether they expect you to be in lab 5 days a week, whether they expect you, to submit for grants or presentations or scholarships, anything like that. So then that way it's kind of this mutual understanding of here's what I'm expecting of you and here's what I can deliver. You should also establish a timeline for short-term or long-term goals. So what I do with my advisor is, you could either set a bi-weekly or monthly meeting and send a calendar invite for the times that you've agreed on. So in those meetings, you can outline the goals and a tentative timeline for academic milestones, such as application deadlines, grad level gateway deadlines, and thesis or dissertation defense deadlines. So this can always be revised later. However, it's important to set up that your initial framing so you could view your degree in a linear progression. My relationship with my advisor, we have a meeting every other week. And if I don't have any new information to provide to her, I normally just say, hey, I'm still working on my project, just wanted to check in, let's meet the following week. So it's definitely you should 100% establish that kind of regular meeting schedule with them, because it does wonders when you're applying for scholarships and grants, when you need a letter of recommendation, when you're on the job search and you kind of just need help and guidance in terms of like check-ins. I also suggest completing the short-term and long-term goals, but putting that into a document. So working with your research advisor during those meetings to say, this is what I want to accomplish by the end of the semester in terms of my research, my teaching, my service, and this is what I hope to accomplish by the end of my degree in terms of research, teaching, and service. Okay, so make sure that your PI is fully aware of what you would like to get out of this research project and clarify what they expect of you as a researcher. Set a schedule that includes meetings with your PI, as well as a weekly research schedule, and be clear about your time commitment and any constraints or schedule changes that you may encounter. So this is a point that I bring up to everyone, and I will tell you all as well. If there are pre-planned vacations or family events, that's totally okay. Like, you are 100% allowed to have a life outside of graduate school. Professors just ask that you basically tell them, in advance if you're going to be gone. Say you have a family trip that you go on every summer, and you know that you won't be in the lab for, the month of July. Being able to communicate that as soon as possible to your advisor will do wonders for your relationship. They'll be able to count on you for certain things. They'll be able to know that during that time span, they're not really supposed to bother you, because you've communicated that and you've established that. So as long as you communicate clearly to your advisor prior to the events happening, you should be able to kind of breeze through that without much interruption in terms of research and teaching. Any questions so far? Okay. Another thing is in terms of your weekly research schedule. So it's 100% dependent on the type of lab that you're in, whether that's hard sciences or soft sciences, wet labs, dry labs. But being able to set up a schedule not only for yourself, but then letting your professor know about that is pretty essential in terms of completing your goals. So what I do, for example, is I go into my Google Calendar and I say on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm working on my lit review. And I block out that time and I let my advisor know, hey, like during this month, this is what I'll be working on. And being able to communicate that and say, like, I have a project that's going on. They're either able to guide you in a certain way and say, well, we could add on things to that, or they could say, okay, keep doing what you're doing. We're proud of you. So kind of setting up that relationship, but then setting up those little milestones and goals will definitely help in terms of working with your professors. So at the beginning of your research experience, 100% check in if you don't know where to start, or you can follow a set research plan. So I've had a lot of students come to me who are like, okay, like I've gotten into grad school, now what? Well, you have to get started somewhere. The point of graduate school is to fulfill like your academic like inclinations. So it's like if you really want to research something and you're really interested in it, communicate that to your advisor. Like, you got into this program because you were good at what you do and because you have the skill set necessary. So being able to just kind of say, hey, I don't really know where to start. Like, here's what I'm interested in. Could you guide me through that? It's 100% okay to ask questions about where to get started. What you don't want to do, though, is you don't want to wait for someone to give you something to do. So you have to be proactive in what you're doing. Because if you stay and you're like, well, my advisor hasn't contacted me and I don't have a project to work on, so I'm just going to wait for them to contact me. Professors are really busy people. So if they don't, like if you're not reaching out to them first, they might not really think about sending out an email or checking in, unless they're also really proactive, which is fantastic. But a lot of times it will come down to the graduate student to kind of set that own plan. And it really helps you in terms of what you're going to be doing after graduate school as well. Being able to take that proactive approach, being able to take initiative in everything that you're doing. So 100%, it's okay to not know what you're doing as long as you tell them, hey, I kind of don't really know where to start. Please help me with this. Follow directions from experienced lab members. That's kind of a given in terms of if there are people, mostly other graduate students who have been there prior to your arrival in the lab or the research space, those people probably have experience with the PI more so than you do currently, which is 100% okay, and they're a great resource. So if you're able to talk to other graduate students within your department or within your specific research lab, that information is invaluable in terms of like the actual graduate experience. Like me in science education, I do not have the same experience as someone in, mechanical engineering. So being able to ask someone who has been through that process before, who has worked with your professor before, will really provide you the information that you need in terms of like, how can I navigate this interaction? Follow all safety protocol if applicable, and don't be afraid to clarify anything if needed. I've also worked in a biology lab during my undergraduate career, and we would have all these OSHA guidelines where it would be, the health and safety guidelines, where they'd be like, okay, well, here are the guidelines for chemicals and for this training and that training. And they would provide us with all this information right up front, but then never really any like refreshers throughout my experience. So if I didn't know how to do something, I would kind of sit there and be like, okay, well, I think I know how to do this, so I'll try to handle it. Don't do that. It's totally okay to approach your professor or another graduate student and say, I just want to double check on this. Like, I realize that we've learned this before. I realize that you may have told me this before, but I just want to make sure that I'm doing this right. Because no matter what it is, whether it's data analysis or, working with reagents in the lab or, writing an op-ed, like the experiences that you've had prior and like the experiences that your advisor has, like those things can work together to hopefully give you a really good experience. And it's always better to ask for help before messing up, so there's a saying that I can't think of the saying now. But basically, it's a lot easier to ask for help than to ask for forgiveness. So if you don't want to make a mistake on something and then have to apologize to them and then go through that whole awkward process, it's a lot easier to be upfront about it and be like, I don't think I know this. Can you help me? Asking questions is probably a lifesaver. Okay, so how do you maintain that relationship with your research advisor? Well, you have to communicate with them. You have to figure out the best way of communicating for yourself and for the advisor. So what I suggest is mutually deciding on what form of communication would be best for both you and your advisor. Some people prefer casual check-in, while some people prefer like email reminders and updates. Me personally, I work really well with emailing. So I will always, I've told my advisor, like, if you need anything from me, like, please email me. I'll check that first. And then in my personal organization, I use Post-it notes. There are some advisors who are like very lax in terms of like how they manage their students. So if they're like, hey, send me a quick text message, letting you know or letting me know that you're okay. Like all of those things are fine. You just have to work out which way works best for you and for your advisor. If your advisor doesn't seem like a person who wants to talk all the time, that's also okay. You would just have to still set up those meetings and then being able to contact them via email, just making sure that you have an open communication channel. Whenever you have a meeting with your advisor, it's really essential to be prepared. I cannot stress how important that is. 100% come with updates on your projects, reading the suggested material provided by your advisor, and then adhering to a consistent schedule. So a lot of times we get bogged down by the things that are happening outside of, our university lives, and those are very real things. Being able to maintain a consistent schedule will not only do wonders for your mental health, but it will also help you navigate the system of graduate school. So no matter what's happening, if you're able to kind of stick to that schedule and keep your meetings with your advisor, you'll at least be able to have enough communication and check-in to make sure that what you're doing is okay. And it'll kind of give you that confidence boost that you might need where, okay, I am on the right track. I know what I'm doing and I got this. So along with that, I'd like to emphasize the importance of respect. So respecting individuals, you may be trained by other graduate students, and that's okay. Be nice to the other graduate students and make friends. Like we all have different experiences and we come from different backgrounds. So remembering that we're all in this together really helps overcome that initial jittery phase. If there are rules or regulations on times to access the space or emergency numbers or directives listed, make yourself aware of those. So in my lab, we had a sheet that was like, emergency contacts, after hours contacts, everything like that. Being able to you should input those into your phone, save them on your computer, do whatever you need to do to remind yourself of that information. Then that way, if there's someone or if something happens when your PI is not around, you know the people to contact and you know the chain of command. Also, connect with the other graduate students there. Like I said, like we're all nice and we all want like good things for each other. So just being able to kind of find that cohort and find your friends within that lab or working environment will definitely help. Definitely respect the workspace, follow expectations set by staff members or your PI. If there are regulations on coming into the lab right now with COVID-19, definitely follow all rules and regulations. All of those things kind of supersede like what you think of safety, if that makes sense. So it's like all the regulations that your PI sets, then there's, the national state regulations, like all of those things, please try following them. Things don't go well when they're brought up to like really high levels. You don't want to deal with like an OSHA violation or like, hazardous chemicals or anything like that. So being able to listen to the people who have been there for a really long time will also provide a lot of experience. And be respectful of your PI's time as well. So as I talked about on the last slide, being prepared for your meetings and respecting their schedule. So if you set a meeting that's supposed to last an hour, try to keep it to an hour. If even if they set a meeting with you, like let them know, like, okay, I have something, like I have class or a meeting, or I'm visiting my family after this. Like it should be like a mutual level of respect in terms of time management, and that's the entire point of setting meetings, is that you're able to know, okay, well, I don't have to fit everything in here right away because I have regular frequent meetings that I'm able to include this if I don't meet the milestone that I need to meet. Now, I do want to address the concept of self-advocacy. You have to be your own biggest advocate. So most of the presentation has been about how to interact with your PI. But unfortunately, not every experience with a mentor is a great experience. While I hope this never happens to you, I had an experience with an incredibly difficult supervisor earlier in my research career. So if you feel like you're falling behind on your work and your relationship with your advisor is negatively impacting your mental health, please reach out for help. There are counseling services, graduate support groups, and the graduate college team is always happy to assist. Both GPSA and the graduate college are fantastic resources in terms of navigating types of situations like that. And we actually have a graduate support team, I believe, where if you're able to contact Dr. Valerie Burke, and she'll get you in contact with the people that you need if you weren't able to resolve that internally. So you should 100% establish boundaries and work toward a positive work-life balance. I know how hard that seems, especially when you're in graduate school and your life kind of seems like it's graduate school and only graduate school. I saw a post recently where someone who was bragging about spending 80 hours in the lab a week, and they were like, well, I spend 80 hours a week and look how many publications I have. And one of the responses to it was like, I spend 20 hours a week in the lab and I've had the same results. So it's not necessarily the time that you're putting into it, it's the actual, like, the effort and like the quality of the work that you're doing. Like it's 100% okay to be like, I'm not coming into lab on nights and weekends because I have a family. I'm not coming into lab because I have a child to take care of. Like all of those things are very real things that you're able to work out with your professor if you communicate that to them. I'm a huge advocate for work-life balance. Me personally, I used to spend all of my time just working in the lab, convincing myself that no matter what, like my advisor would think I was a good like research student because of how hard I worked. But in reality, it's you're getting the same amount of work done, only you're stretching yourself really thin. And we don't need to experience that. Like I had an old advisor who used to say suffering is optional. And while, that kind of struck me the wrong way, it's true, where it's you don't have to suffer through this. There are better ways to do it. Communicate what you hope to get out of your research projects and what conferences and papers you'd like to attend or publish. So that's a really important aspect as well, where you shouldn't be completely steamrolled in terms of your research. If you have an advisor who you've been working with for a while and you're not really working on any presentations or posters or publications, check in with them and say, hey, like I've done all of this work. Am I able to present this somewhere? A lot of times faculty have a ton of other things going on. So they might not necessarily reach out to the lab or to the students and say, hey, here's a conference coming up. We want you to present here. What I do is I'll seek out conferences or scholarships that I want to apply for, and I'll bring that to my advisor and I'll type out a little email, or I'll save it in our calendar invite for upcoming meeting. And I'll say, this is something that I'm interested in doing. Like, do you think this would fit the scope of the lab? Like, would I be able to submit something, for this? And be aware of the resources and rights afforded to you as a graduate student. So as I mentioned previously, there's the graduate college support team, there's the graduate student handbook, and your graduate coordinators and department chairs are also a really good resource for information regarding your program. So if you're not super comfortable like approaching your advisor with an issue that you may be having, try to work that out first with them. Like, it's really, really important to try to work that out with them, because they are humans, you are humans, we can all communicate with each other. But if it does get to the point where it's unresolvable at like an internal level, know that there are resources and support groups to help you through that. And I also want to plug the graduate support groups at the Counseling and Psychological Center at UNLV. So I think it's UNLV CAPS. And they have like graduate student groups where it's literally just group therapy, and you meet with other graduate students and you talk about things that you're stressed about or dealing with. And it's really unique to the graduate experience. So like if you are suffering or dealing with any of that, like there is help available. And you shouldn't have to go through like a bad relationship with your research advisor. So hopefully this will help you make it better. So continuing your research experience, 100% please take initiative. Grants, scholarships, presentations, not only does it make you look good, but it also makes your advisor look good. So if you're going for all of these things and you say, I want to, finish a publication by the end of my PhD, then letting your advisor know that, you're able to work towards a solid goal. Ask meaningful questions, stay on track. So that timeline really helps with evaluating your progress and updating your principal investigator. And I always say, like, apply for as many things as possible. The more things that you apply for, the more you'll work with your faculty advisor and the better recommendations you can receive. So if you don't really know your advisor too well, this happened to me right when I started graduate school. I, picked up my advisor and I was like, okay, well, I don't really know what to do from here. I found grants and scholarships that I wanted to apply for. One of them happened to be the Nevada NASA Fellowship. And I emailed my advisor and I was like, I know you don't know me too well. Here's my background. Here's what I want to apply for. Do you think we can work out a research project that would fit the scope of this fellowship? And it ended up working out really well. And I ended up getting the fellowship. And now my advisor knows that, okay, here's what I'm interested in. Here's my work ethic. And they're able to provide you better recommendations in terms of like job prospects and like interest to take after graduate school, but they also get to know you on a more personal level, which allows them to write you better letters of recommendation as well. So mentor do's and don'ts. Do be honest. It's totally okay to make mistakes. The quicker you're able to kind of overcome that, the better your experience will be. Do communicate vacation time off or your exam schedule or anything like that. I try to let my professor know at the beginning of the semester if I have any upcoming vacations where I might be gone for a week. If I have, well, not during COVID, but back when we had travel. If I have like a really heavily packed like midterm schedule for some reason, letting them know that, so then that way it's like if you're not super productive around like one specific month, then they'll at least know why. And you're able to tell them about that way beforehand. You should also consult other graduate students or postdocs. Chances are, if they've been through the program, they know the struggles, so being able to connect with other people and have that lived experience is really, really beneficial. And do meet deadlines. That one's also a little self-explanatory. So don't ignore or avoid your PI. This is actually a really easy cycle to fall into, where if you're not getting an issue resolved, or if you have a problem that's unresolved, say you don't really know where to take your data analysis and you're like, okay, well, I don't want them to think that I'm stupid and I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just going to avoid them. That's not going to fix it. It will cause more problems down the road. So being able to approach them and establish that relationship will eventually help with all those problems down the line, so that I know that if I mess up on something, or like if I've, did my data analysis wrong, or, I ran the wrong statistical, like, I don't know, whatever it is, being able to communicate that to your advisor is essential. And then they could help you walk through it, because that's their entire purpose, is to not only have you graduate, but to make sure that they're putting out an individual who's skilled in academics and research and service. So it's not just the graduation mill. It's not just, here's your diploma, good luck out there. Like, they're trying to create an individual who understands academia and who is kind of seen like on a peer-to-peer level. So being able to take care of those problems early will work wonders for your career. It's um don't pretend to know information or protocols. It's okay to revisit topics or trainings. As I said before, it's better to ask how to do something than to ask for permission rather than um oh my gosh, I'm really bad at this phrase, so I'm just not going to use it anymore. um Also, don't make important decisions alone. A lot of times we kind of get into our own heads and we're like, okay, let's figure out like where I'm applying for say you're in a master's program and you want to apply for a PhD program, or you're applying for a postdoc position. Try not to make those decisions alone, because a lot of times your advisor might have a lot more information on the subject than what you originally know. So being able to kind of talk with them through those processes, they might be able to give you advice or ideas that you didn't even think of. So definitely don't try doing that on your own. There's an entire team here to support you. There's workshop series, there's people to help. There's definitely a lot of different routes to take so that you don't have to kind of go through that entire process by yourself. So to continue your relationship with your research advisor, remember to have fun. Research is a rewarding experience, and there's still life outside of graduate school. So being able to kind of put that into, I guess, like, frame that in a way where it's like, this is a really, really important part of my life, and this is an important relationship. But I also have like a family and friends and life outside of graduate school. Like, both of those things can exist at the same time, and they're both true. Work hard and showcase your talent to your PI. Be proud of the work that you do. Like, if you present at a conference and you do really, really well at your conference, like, tell your advisor. Be like, hey, look at this awesome accomplishment that I had. A lot of times advisors love to hear about those things, and they'll put you in newsletters, they'll submit it to UNLV Today. Like, all of your accomplishments and your endeavors should be celebrated. So make sure to take time to do that as well. And also remember that your PI is a person as well. So getting to know your mentor and your background and their background will definitely teach you a lot about the field that you're interested in pursuing. So asking them questions about how they got to where they are, what degrees they had, what research they did, what their dissertation was like. Their experiences will always be different than ours, but they will also provide a lot of invaluable like advice and knowledge that we just don't have the foresight to see as graduate students. So being able to really talk to them and learn about like what they like, what they're interested in researching, how they ended up where they are, and whether or not they know anyone either within the field or outside of the field who's doing exactly what you want to do with your career. Because chances are they do have those connections and they're happy to refer you if you have a positive relationship with them. So that's about wraps up my side of the presentation. I'm more than happy to take the rest of the time to or to answer any questions or talk about like individual experiences or anything like that. I've listed my email on this page as well. So 100%, if you have questions about anything, I'm happy to answer them, as well as the GPSA website, and that's where we list like scholarships, grants, upcoming meetings. And then the link that I was talking about in terms of the graduate support services, that's actually unlv.edu/graduate college/advising. and that will bring you to the informational page of who to contact for what, or if you need help kind of navigating that system, if you are in like a negative relationship that's affecting you. So hopefully that kind of provides you a pretty decent overview of how to manage that relationship with your professor. I'm happy to take any questions, comments, anything.
Thank you, Nicole. It's always nice to hear about this topic from an actual student. It's more relatable and nice to hear your experience. So we have a question. How often should I be meeting or in communication with my advisor?
So it depends on your program and it depends what you're doing. I would say minimum like once a month. It would really help to check in with them just to make sure that you're kind of on track to graduate, whether that's understanding like, okay, here's when my prospectus is due. Here's when here's when my qualifying exams are. And knowing that you're on track to meet those milestones um, can't really be done like just once a semester, you know? So it's like I have bi-weekly meetings with my advisor, so I meet with them every other week. That is sometimes like way too much for other people. So it's what you're comfortable with, but try to at least establish something where you're able to at least check in with them once a month.
Thank you. So what are some tips that you might have that are helpful to fostering a mentor and mentee relationship virtually? So since, being your research advisor or mentor, they can't really oversee what you're doing as much with these circumstances as they would if you were in a physical workspace.
Yeah, so that's actually where like Google Calendar and Google Chat have been super useful for me. So I chat with my advisor on GChat, which is just opened up in like the UNLV email. And I think your Rebel Mail and your at unlv.edu email has access to it if you have one of those. But basically, I, will send her updates through there and I'll be like, hi, saw that you were online. Just wanted to let you know this is what I've been working on, and she'll usually give me a thumbs up. Or if there's something pertinent, then she'll respond to that. Um, Also, I have video calls with my advisor. So being able to just check in with them, even if it's like a 10-minute talk, just being able to like physically see someone's face and go through the motions of like having a normal meeting with someone definitely helps. Other than that, working in lab, I like to keep a log of what I have worked on. So normally in lab, I would have my lab notebook, and then I would have a notebook where I just wrote down like a general idea of what I've been working on. So it's like, last week I worked on separating out the reagents and labeling my test tubes. Like this week I'm working on this. And then that way, if anything ever does come up, you're able to tell your advisor, oh, well, this is the progress that I've been making. Is there anything else that you'd like me to work on?
Thank you. So do you have any tips on how we should approach a situation where we want to take initiative on something like a project and be kind of in charge of that without overstepping any boundaries?
That's a tough one because you have to make sure that it's still within or in line with the goals of your research lab and the goals of your degree. So if you get to a point where you want to do something, but your PI says that that's not a good idea, but like you're really set on doing it and you think it's a good idea, establish that, like set up a meeting with them and ask them, like, oh, why don't you think I should pursue this? Like being able to have that open relationship and that open like communication definitely helps. Um, Also, like if it's something where it's like they just have to sign off on it, where it's like a scholarship or something like that, I would let them know, be like, this is something I'm really interested in pursuing. I'm going to be doing these things. And if it's going to affect my research or anything in any way, then you should let them know. But like being able, hopefully like you have a good relationship enough with them where you're able to like communicate that with them. I know that doesn't necessarily answer the question too well, but like, okay, a good example is like I'm a part of GPSA. like my advisor is like, Nicole, stop signing up for extracurricular activities. So I'm like, okay, let's sit down and have a meeting and talk about like basically like, here's what my time commitments are and here's why I know that I'll be able to handle this position. And then after that meeting, it's like, okay, 100%, I now understand this. This is why it's important to you. And this is how it's going to contribute to your academic career. So as long as you're able to kind of justify those points, your advisor shouldn't have a problem with it. The main thing is that they just don't want too many things impacting your work and your research and your graduation, because they do eventually want to see you graduate and to get out into the world and be a free person.
Thanks, Nicole. Does anybody else have any questions for Nicole? Please feel free. You can either unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat and she'd be happy to answer those.
I did get a question about sharing the PowerPoint as a reference. Yeah, so Nevena, I believe that will be on the YouTube channel, correct?
Yeah, we will be posting this on the YouTube channel.
Perfect, okay. And then I have the PowerPoint, so if anyone wants like a copy of the PowerPoint, like you can 100% email me. I'm gonna put my email in the chat actually.
Nicole, I can actually just send it to everyone that participated today, so
perfect.
that will make it easier for you.
Perfect, thank you, yeah.
Well, if we don't have any other questions, I guess we'll wrap up our workshop for today. But before we do, thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your time with us. This was super informative and a very important topic for all graduate students. And it's just really nice to hear from another graduate student perspective and to hear about your experiences. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us today. We're going to be posting this, like I mentioned, on our channel and probably next week. But I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and we'll see you at the next workshop.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Happy Friday, everyone. If you need anything, 100% feel free to email me. Yeah. Thanks.